Welcome to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, founder of the Reiki Business Collective and creator of the Build Your Reiki Business program, sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Greetings, welcome, and thanks so much for joining me. It's Christian, and I am so honored to have you here for another Build Your Reiki Business podcast episode. Now, this episode is actually a two-part episode in which we are talking all about protection. We're talking about physical protection, online digital protection, energetic protection in this two-part episode. In this first part of this two-part episode, we're talking about physical protection, how to keep yourself safe physically as a Reiki business owner. I'm also going to talk a little bit about digital protection, and then in the next episode, we're talking all about energetic protection. As a Reiki business owner, as a Reiki practitioner, we can put ourselves into some unsafe situations. Now, if you are brand new looking to start a Reiki business and you're thinking, oh my gosh, being a Reiki practitioner is unsafe, maybe I shouldn't do this, hold on. The truth is that anything can be unsafe. I mean, let's be real. Just getting into a car and driving down the street can be unsafe. So when I say that we as Reiki practitioners, Reiki business owners, sometimes put ourselves into unsafe situations, it's just the fact that we are often in a room all by ourselves with our client. And anytime we are in a room all by ourselves with anyone, it can be a potentially unsafe situation. But with Reiki, like with massage, there are tables involved, and sometimes some people might have the wrong idea about what we do and about what Reiki is. And no matter what we're doing, anytime we are in a room alone with another person, a stranger who we don't know, then yes, indeed, we do have the potential for an unsafe situation, not unlike a therapist or counselor might encounter in a room alone with a stranger. But this is not unlike all kinds of situations in life. Really, anything has a level of danger to it. And so, hey, as Reiki practitioners, there's a level of danger in what we do. Physical, energetic, digital, or otherwise, we'll talk about all of those things in the next two episodes. But first and foremost, I believe that physical safety is the most important. And I believe that physical protection is our most important consideration as Reiki practitioners, both our physical protection and that of our clients. Now, in these episodes, we're focusing on our protection, but I do want to make sure to mention that the client's protection is also very important during our sessions, that we want to make sure that we're not only looking out for ourselves, but that we are also looking out for our clients and keeping their physical safety, their emotional safety in mind as well. So throughout this discussion, let's not forget our clients, although I'm going to be talking about tips for our safety as the practitioner. The very first way for us to protect ourselves as Reiki practitioners is our level of professionalism. Our level of professionalism, because showing up as a professional sends a message to our potential clients, to our clients, and really sets the tone for the session and what a client can expect from the session. And so when we approach our work with a certain level of professionalism, we are sending a message right up front that this is a professional setting, that when they step into our office, when they get on the table, when they are in a session or a class with us, it is a professional setting. Our physical protection also comes down to our boundaries, so setting clear boundaries and enforcing them. This, along with professionalism, it's a component of professionalism. And this sends a message to the client, to the potential client, that we are professionals, that we are showing up as professionals, that we have clear professional boundaries, and that we will and do enforce them. But when it comes to actual specifics, the first thing that I want to encourage us on for protecting ourselves is evaluating our intake process, because this is the place where we can really start to set the expectations and the boundaries and really enforce them. Of course, it starts before the client even schedules with things like our website, our materials, but really we can set strong boundaries and expectations during the intake process. So, of course, number one, I encourage having a disclaimer. A disclaimer is important not only for our legal protection, which of course we want to have a disclaimer to protect ourselves legally, but also for our physical protection. Because in the disclaimer, we have the opportunity to explain to a client very clearly what Reiki is and what Reiki isn't. And it's this disclaimer where we have the opportunity to set those expectations for the client, to be clear about the fact that Reiki is something that everyone participates in fully clothed. You're fully clothed. The client is fully clothed. Clothes all stay on. And this is helpful for the client, not only the client who may be thinking or wishing or hoping that there are clothes off, but also the client who might be worried about that too, and afraid and nervous about that. And so having clear language around that can really help to put clients at ease who are nervous, and to set the expectation for any client who thinks they're going to strip down and get on your table. Number two is that you can vet your clients. And some practitioners do this, and they do this to varying extents, where they will really, in a sense, check out the client before scheduling them or before having the session. So some practitioners will have a phone call with the client when they schedule initially to make sure that they understand what Reiki is, to see what they're looking to get out of the session, and to set those clear expectations, set those boundaries and enforce them, and to use that as an opportunity to determine whether or not the client is a good fit for them. Now, it's your business and you can do whatever you want with it. And so if you want to have a phone call and vet clients, or however you want to do it, I've also heard of practitioners actually meeting potential clients in a public space to have a chat first. Now, I personally don't go to that kind of trouble, but you may very well, and it's absolutely okay if you want to do that. But it's your business, and you can vet clients as much or as little as you want to, and that's absolutely okay. Another way to do this is by only scheduling with friends and friends of friends, or people you know and people who know the people you know. This can indeed help us to feel safer when we are alone with clients, whether we are seeing them in an office or in our home or for a mobile session. I'll talk about all those in a minute, but no matter what kind of session you are having, no matter where it might be, you're allowed to determine who you see in your Reiki business. Many Reiki practitioners are women, and many female Reiki practitioners only want to work with women, and that is okay. But if this is the case, this is the kind of thing that you want to make very clear in all of your marketing materials, your intake process, everything, that you only work with clients who identify as women. But if you are going to use this as a protective measure for yourself, I really encourage having a practitioner that you can refer out to. So if you're saying, I only want to work with women, I don't feel comfortable with men, I don't feel comfortable being in a room alone with a man, that's okay. And I recommend knowing a practitioner or two who will work with men so that you can refer those men who might come to you seeking a session to those other practitioners. This is, again, keeping in mind the client. That's not our focus in these episodes, but it's also best for the client. So if you have a concern about working with men, rather than trying to do the session anyway, despite your fear or working through your fear, it's just better for the client as well to be with a practitioner who truly wants to work with them and who feels comfortable in the session and who isn't already going to be worried or nervous or not want to see them. I don't know about you, but I don't want to go to a practitioner who's nervous about working with me, who is already feeling afraid, and who already really doesn't want to be in the session. I personally would much rather go to a practitioner who genuinely wants to meet with me and to see me and to work with me. And so it's best for the client as well. If indeed you don't feel safe working with a particular client or kind of client, that's okay. But refer them out to someone who is more comfortable and who is happy to work with them. So that's how we can protect ourselves during the intake process. There are plenty of other ways that we can do this, but those are just a few ways that we can protect ourselves during the intake process. Now, during our sessions, there are plenty of measures that we can take for our physical protection. First of all, if you are seeing clients in your home, this, of course, is a vulnerable kind of experience because you're in your own personal space. One of the great things about seeing clients in our home is that we can control the space. We have ultimate control over the space, but we're also bringing people into our personal space depending on what our setup is in our home or in a space on our property. But one thing that you can do if you are seeing clients in your home and you are home alone is to mention that someone is present and to apologize for that. So to say something like, oh, my roommate is here. I'm really sorry if you hear them. I apologize in advance. They're usually really quiet, but I just want to say I'm sorry if they make any noise during our session. Or mentioning that the person may arrive. Oh, my partner, my husband, my roommate, my sister, my best friend might be showing up, might be arriving, might be coming home during our session. Just a heads up, if you hear something, it's okay. It's not ghosts. My house isn't haunted. I mean, maybe your house is haunted. but to let them know that they may hear something, someone may be arriving, and you apologize if that's the case. Now, here's the thing. This may or may not be true. You may or may not have a roommate, a partner, a husband, a wife, someone or something that might be showing up. We want to be honest with our clients and our students. We want to be open, upfront, and authentic in our exchanges, our discussions, our conversations with clients. And I think it's okay to fib a little when it comes to our personal safety. And so if you are with a client and you are feeling unsafe, I think it's absolutely okay to say, hey, someone might be showing up. If you hear something, I apologize. And it's just fill in the blank of whoever it is or whoever it might be. Maybe even ghosts if they are afraid of ghosts. Now, if you have a mobile Reiki business, there are a few things that you can do here to protect yourself as well. When you get to the session, you can let the person know if you are in their home and feeling uncomfortable. Oh, someone is expecting me to be home at such and such a time, or someone is expecting me to meet them after this session, or I have a session right after this. And so that you're setting up right up front that expectation that I need to leave right on the dot at the time when our session is supposed to be over. I need to leave when it ends. And so they know that someone is expecting you. Someone is going to know if you are going to be late. Now, I talk about some other tips for safety in the podcast episode on Mobile Reiki. I'll drop that down below so you can tune into that as well. But in that episode, I also mentioned that you may want to have someone who knows where you are going and when you expect to return. So you're going to such and such address, and you will be home. The session lasts from this time to this time, and you are expected to be home at a particular time. And then they can text you if they don't actually live with you, check on you, see how you are, and make sure you're okay. There are concerns, maybe questions about client confidentiality and providing client information to third parties. And I absolutely believe 1000% in protecting client data and in client privacy. And if there's an emergency in an emergency situation, it is helpful for someone to be able to have access to your calendar or to have an idea of where you are, when you will expect to return, or other information that would be really helpful if something happens to you. So I'm not advocating sharing client information with someone who doesn't need to know it, but maybe that someone can get access to it in the event of an emergency. I think this in particular is helpful for when you have a mobile practice and are going into people's homes. Now, when it comes to an office setting, there isn't as much of a concern when you are in a building with multiple office spaces and you are meeting with a client during typical office hours and there's lots of activity happening in the office space. And, like if you screamed or something, someone would be able to hear you. But sometimes we might be meeting with clients during off hours. Sometimes we might not be in an office where there's other activity and other offices and other things happening. And sometimes we might have an office in a location that isn't the safest. And so there's a question of cameras. Cameras. Should we be using cameras in our Reiki spaces? I will say for me personally, I think no, because the Reiki space is like a therapeutic meeting with a counselor kind of space. It's a private therapeutic space. But some practitioners might prefer to have cameras in their Reiki space, and I have no judgment of that, as long as the client is aware, as long as it is in keeping with all applicable laws, of course, and as long as the client is aware and consents. But you can always have cameras in spaces other than the Reiki room. So the entrance, for instance. And we can even use this as a way to protect ourselves by clearly informing the client of their presence. And so maybe we're informing the client about the camera as a courtesy to them, but it's also a preventative measure. Because if a client has some thoughts in their mind of how they might want the session to go or what kind of experience they might want to have, knowing that cameras are there may serve as a deterrent to them. And so we can frame it with the client as a courtesy to them, like we're informing them as a courtesy, wanting them to be fully informed and fully aware. And the purpose from our standpoint can be one of prevention. So it's a courtesy to the client to let them know that they are being filmed, whether at the entrance or anywhere else. And ultimately, the purpose can be for your own protection. Now, what about distance Reiki? Do we need to worry about protecting ourselves in distance Reiki? Yes. Yes, still, there is a level of consideration for our physical protection, even though we are not in the same space as the client. Because depending upon where you are holding your distance sessions, for instance, maybe in your home, what you display on the screen can give signals and information to a client. So I recommend a neutral background when you are seeing someone for a distance session, a background in which there isn't a lot of clutter. Now, this is just professional. I believe it's just professional for us to have a neutral background for our distance sessions, but it's also protective because you're not then giving away information to a client about yourself, about your living situation, about what you got going on. This is also the case for in-home sessions, in which, depending upon your setup, this is a little more difficult than in other spaces, but to strive to have as little information about your personal self as possible that's visible to a client. Now, if your clients that you're seeing in your home are friends and family, then okay, that's no problem, right? Your friends and family know all your stuff anyway. But if you're seeing strangers or people who you know tangentially, then I do recommend having their access to what they see in your home and about you and your living situation limited, that you strive to limit that information. Now, that's a lot about physical protection, and there's a lot to say about it. We could indeed say more, but I want in this episode to make sure to say a few things about digital protection as well, because this does help with our physical protection. So things like having a business phone is really helpful. Using something like Google Voice can be really helpful so that you're not giving out your own personal phone number. I personally have given out my personal number to clients in the past. I don't currently do that, and I haven't done that for several years, but I did do that in the past. But as far as our online presence, I recommend being careful about what we share. In particular, I recommend being careful about posting, about being away, and about being on vacation or not home, especially if you see clients in your home, because your clients are going to know where you live. One thing that I like to do with my online presence is that I usually don't post where I'm going, but I'll post about where I've been. So I'll come from somewhere and post that I was there rather than broadcasting to the whole world, I'm going to this particular place. Now, I'll post about that when I go to like a fair or an expo or something. Okay, no problem. Those are spaces where lots of people are. But if it's a particular location where someone might be able to stalk me, I might not mention it until I come back. You know, scammers are out there and everywhere. And so we have to be careful because there are scammers that specifically target spiritual business owners. Now, I have a whole podcast episode on scams. I'll drop that down below. But dealing with haters is a thing that we need to deal with as well for keeping ourselves protected digitally. I'll drop that episode down below too. One other way that I like to protect myself digitally online is that I will use hidden pages on my website for specific things. So, for instance, with my mobile clients, I have a special dedicated page on my website. It's hidden from view. You can't find it if you go to my website. It's hidden from search engines. The only way you can get to it is if I specifically give you the link. And on that page is information about scheduling with me, how to schedule, the ability to schedule a mobile session, information about where I will go for a mobile session. And there's no reason for anyone in the world to see that unless you are scheduling a mobile session with me. And so that's one way that I help to protect myself is I keep things like that hidden and accessible only on a need-to-know basis. If I had clients in my home, I would definitely do that and keep that very separate and not visible from my main site. So being very careful about what we're posting about our living situation and how. So, what are your tips for protection? How do you protect yourself in your Reiki business? Comment, let us know, tell us your thoughts, and join us in the Reiki Business Collective Facebook group and tell us all about it at facebook.com/groups/Reiki Biz. Sending so many blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Thanks for tuning in to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and send to a friend. Learn more about the Build Your Reiki Business program at standingstoneshealing.com/build. Sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business.